Illinois is an ag state, and it's been a remarkable ag state, but trees sequester carbon, and we're going through climate change issues. And so I would like to try to protect as much of the Shawnee National Forest as possible. And then I learned that hemp has all these remarkable building products with it. There's an entire back table back there that shows insulation made with hemp. You can literally rub that insulation on your face and you won't be itchy the rest of the day. That's really exciting to me. They've got sheathing, they've got soundboard, they've got wallboard, they've got flooring. And it's the most remarkable thing to me, and I get very excited talking about the potential of sequestering carbon and using hemp as building materials. So I get very excited when I go up to Springfield and talk about hemp, and that's usually when I'm like, look at all these goodies we can do. So anyways, now that y'all are back in the space, our next speakers are going to talk about the business of hemp. We've got Beau and we've got Wolfe. Who wants to go first?
Go ahead.
After you.
Hi, my name is Wolfgang von Stauffenberg. I grew up between Illinois and California. I grew up in Illinois on a former hemp farm and am actively bringing hemp back to Illinois. Specifically, my focus has been Champaign County. My experience in cannabis is Washington, Oregon, California, and Colorado. I am a producer of marijuana. I am a producer of hemp. We produce seed. We produce biomass, and we extract for CBD isolate. My experience recently, the past handful of years, has been focused on CBD production. One of the things that I thought of as I was preparing for today that I want to say is you are the innovators. You are the ag leaders of now. And with that carries a lot of responsibility to do things the right way and the mindful way, much like Mike Graham has done, covering all bases from the beginning so we don't have to go back and redo it. And what's beautiful about this crop is it brings choices to the table. It brings options to the table other than the standard corn and soybeans. I own an ag services company. And as I said, we do provide genetics. We are in production and research of genetics. We do consulting. We do brokerage of product, including contracts. We offer crop insurance. We offer lobby and government relations services. And we are called the Farm Bureau of Cannabis, to put it in those terms. What we are finding is that the real estate and the capacity to utilize that real estate is very, very strong when it comes to government relations, when it comes to business relations. So keep that in mind. Your farmland is worth a lot. However, it's going to be worth a lot more after you have hemp on it. The quality of soil is going to go up. Your commodity is also going to raise in value. Now, the costs, yes, are going to go down over time. We want that. That makes it accessible to everyone, and we plan ahead for that as well. I'm going to talk to you just for a second just to give you some numbers and some visuals on what we're doing in Colorado. Right now we're taking 120 acre pivot irrigation land, high alkaline soil, and we're planting CBD plants at the rate of just over 1,700 plants per acre. Now we're expecting on gross to make about $500,000 per acre at about 10 to 12% cost of goods or cost of production. That's pretty darn good. And a majority of our cost is seed, because seed is good, standard, stable seed is difficult to come by. It's so nice to call the Pioneer dealer. It's so nice to call the DeKalb dealer and say, I need this many bags. Whereas in the hemp industry right now, it takes months to source seed. It takes months. It's a long, long process. But we're grossing out at about $500,000 per acre at about 10 to 12% cost. Now, biomass is going for, and it goes by the percentage of CBD. Anything that's 8 to 10% and above, we're getting about $55 to $60 per pound on biomass. On isolate, we're getting around 7,000 per kilo. Now, right now, we've just seen a price jump in the industry, and the processors are really banding together and figuring out what pricing is best for now and setting that tone going forward. 4 months ago, we were at 5,000 per kilo. Okay. Now that plants are going in the ground, we're going to see a shortage. We're going to see that dry up or the supply dry up, and we'll probably see, I don't know, 8.5 to 9, 8.5 to 87.50 per kilo on that finished product. One of the nice parts about that pricing is that it can be stored. The biomass can be stored. And we're looking for about a 25% to 33% humidity rate, moisture rate, okay, to store it. It's pretty easily controlled, much like storing wet hay, if you want to go in that mass. Whereas on a smaller mass, you can use something like a magnesium sulfate in your room to pull that humidity out. I have seen a few thousand acres of field hemp, of industrial hemp, and it's done in different ways, and it's just your own style, the way you want to do it, such as the resting about 24 hours after you cut that plant to let the moisture soak in. And there are farms that will plow a trench next to that row or group of rows that they're about to put in there, and then they soak that down with water. They fill that with water for about 24 hours. Now, one of the difficult parts about that is how are you going to transfer that wet product? It's really better to find a processor that's going to wet that product by the bale so you don't have to transfer wet product. But what I'm really excited about is the government relations. It's the lobby. What I'm really excited about is the processing and the capacity to build an industry the way you want to build that industry without being encumbered by the big ag corporates, whether it be the processors or the machine companies or the seed companies. We have the means to create an industry the way we want to do agriculture. When I look around this room, there's a lot of soul in this room. These are people that want to take back their land for themselves instead of being beholden to that contract. And I think that's what inspires me the most in my day-to-day work. I deal with a lot of frantic, paranoid, anxious people. The industry is inherent. It's that way. We have a lot of paranoia in the industry, and the chuckles in the room tell me you know what I'm talking about. But when you deal with that on a day-to-day basis, and you have jurisdictions knocking on the door, when you have government officials, negating and validating what you're trying to get done, you learn to swim with that. And I think that's the biggest thing we can do as an industry is roll with those punches. Roll with those punches. I see a couple crosses in the audience. Jesus rolled with the punches to get his work done. We need to do the same thing. We don't need to ask for permission. We need to go to them with solutions, right, Mike? We go to them with solutions. We do not wait for them to tell us what to do. We're going to tell them what we're going to do. As long as we're compliant, as long as we're respectful, as long as we mind that property line, whatever it may mean, we have to do what we have to do. We have about 5 years to get this done. We have about 5 years to establish ourselves as an industry in the state of Illinois, rather in the country. And that goes globally, because once our federal gates are down, that's going to open federal. Look at how much is controlled by the DEA, the International Drug Trade and Drug Enforcement Agencies. A lot of trade pacts, a lot of people have starved and frozen over hemp, over marijuana. there's some beautiful hemp grows in other countries that will have never seen the light of day because they were threatened by U.S. Tariffs and trade issues, trade laws. So I can go on and on about all that. But that's a little bit about me.
Hi, everyone. My name is Beau Henson. My background is over the last 5 years. I've been doing regional planning and economic development. That's been, my territory is basically Mount Vernon down 57 down to Marion, over the Carbondale, including Perry County. I left that about a year ago to re-enter as a PhD student at SIUC, where I concentrate on political ecology, sustainable development, and agribusiness economics. I also run a small outreach firm called Inspiration Point Solutions. I'm also a member of SIGN, that's Southern Illinois Growers Network. We have a lot of those members here today. I'd like to welcome Aldwin and Claire in the back. They are the two professors at our university that holds the federal research permit. And if you have any questions about that type of work, they've offered to answer those questions. I really like what you said about how we need to refocus on how we work through the government regulation system. Another group that has worked on this forum is the DSA Solidarity Economy Working Group, DSA meaning Democratic Socialists of America. So I really like how hemp, this particular plant, the choices that it brings, the opportunity it may bring, can bring so many different types of people together in one room, and I just wanted to focus on that point for a second. So we're taking a much different approach to this hemp product. We're really concentrating on a subsistence-based economy in Southern Illinois. I've done some recent what's called location quotient analysis, LQ analysis, to see what's our healthiest economic sectors when it comes to exporting our intellectual or material properties. And we are down to 3, and none of them are considered technically vigorous. So our economic base in Southern Illinois, and specifically in Jackson County, is just an extraordinary free fall. So we are really concentrating on how will we be able to focus, how will we be resilient to economic shocks as they continue to happen in this world, and how do we take commodities and provide our basic needs over a course of time. And that's why we've really gotten interested in hemp. As Marty was saying, fiber is the easiest and lowest capital barrier in order to get into. So that's what we're really concentrating on. We're hoping, and we've been doing a lot of work on recruiting new farmers, young farmers, to get people back and interested in it. But we are hoping to produce a closed system in Southern Illinois where small-scale manufacturing and processing can happen here. Some of those products we're already experimenting on includes hempcrete, a real simple product, hemp herds, limestone, which we got a ton of in Southern Illinois, water, and some people use a little bit of clay and mud. We've had a lot of requests from contractors and architects for floorboarding. We're in a very soggy part and hot part of the country, and so regular particle boards often get so wet that they lose a lot of time on the job. We're also trying to design these things with casting systems that would allow it to easily interlock with each other, tons and grooves, maybe Lego blocks. So any layman can potentially go out with a little bit of training and simply build their own house, their own sheds, that sort of thing. We've talked a little bit about the type of products come out of here. 50,000 is what we're thinking. Clothing, we've talked about food stuff, even though that's a little harder to get into. CBD oils are a little harder to get into. But it's an exciting opportunity. I also work with a lot of federal agencies. So we've had a lot of discussions with our local USDA, and they've helped us partner with Western Illinois University's Institute for Rural Affairs Soon we hope to establish out of our Economic Development Center, the Dunn Richmond Center in Carbondale, Illinois, a group that is basically a collectives of collectives or cooperatives of cooperatives, where any product, hemp or otherwise, if it's in a cooperative system, would have the technical assistance in order to create their own collective, whatever their product may be. Going back to the USDA, they are interested in hemp, even though there's still problems on the federal level. At least here, they are really banking on the fact that it is going to be a thing. The two things that they're interested is using their cooperative money, but they also have monies for specialized equipment. So when we're talking about having to come up with maybe new tools or new innovative solutions in order to do harvesting or planting or whatnot, when this becomes illegal, especially on the federal level, I would reach out to your USDA reps because they look like they're very interested. Another federal agency that I work with is the Delta Regional Authority. I'm on their Delta Leadership Institute Fellowship Program. So we continue to build a network for exporting through 8 states: Southern Illinois, Kentucky, Missouri, Arkansas, Tennessee, Louisiana, Mississippi. So they are given a lot of technical assistance on how to get product onto these rivers. And someone mentioned this before. Southern Illinois in particular has an advantage because we're close to the Mississippi and Ohio rivers, but they're opening up doors all the way down to the port of New Orleans. When it comes to high capital development, I would suggest everyone to take a look at what's called 3 Ps, private, public partnerships. The DRA, once again, if you have a group of farmers and someone interested in processing, and you get a municipality or a county to buy into this, the federal government is, in these kind of projects, often will help fund those projects up to 90%. And that's basically all I got. It's big. It's real big, and that's something that is specific to Southern Illinois, Western Kentucky, and SEMA, and going south. 3 Ps is public-private partnerships.
I want to jump in with a little bit more before we go there. So one of the things that I've been working full-time with cannabis for 10 years, by the way. I started utilizing cannabis at 8 years old for PTSD and pain. I'm a bareback bronc rider and steer wrestler, and always had livestock and grain as well. One of the points of responsibility that we have in this new industry is what we're doing with the money, right? A few of you looked at each other, raised your eyebrows, and said, "Wow, $500,000 per acre." Well, a good portion of that needs to go back to the community. And as a new industry, we need to reset the example for other ag industries, right? We know there's money to be made. We know the margins are good. But the key to this plant is the karma, right? You can roll your eyes and call me airy fairy granola. I don't care, because I know that karma is there. I've seen the plants get excited when someone walks into the greenhouse. So it's important that we figure out as individuals what's important to us, whether it be a church or education or healthcare equity or social equity in some way, whatever it is, new roads, better, less potholes, whatever it may be. But because you're going to be making a large amount of money, you need to figure out how you're going to offset your taxes, and how you offset your taxes is what makes a difference in the success of you as a farmer and the success of this industry. So we look as a company, when we look for areas to raise the product, and we are looking at hundreds of thousands of square feet of indoor, we are looking at multiple thousands of acres of outdoor grow, we're looking at what that community needs. And it's that preparedness, I think economic preparedness, a lot of these, or economic need, a lot of the communities that we go into are not prepared for the influx of tax revenue. I've been working for 5 years with a community in Colorado that it's pristine. $1,000 an acre for land. I'm not going to tell you where it is. $1,000 an acre for land, and the people are in need. However, can you imagine a $1.3 to $2.5 million per acre tax revenue? And how a community is, if a community is ill-equipped to handle this, it just goes to general fund. And we know what happens when money goes into the general fund. So that's an important area to really look at as you're searching, as you're making decisions. It's what is personally right for you. For some, it may mean growing marijuana. For some, it may mean growing nutritional hemp seed. I want to talk briefly, if I may.
And I want to piggyback on this as well.
Okay, good. We're good.
Yeah.
I want to point out that hemp is a cooler protein. It's a cooler feed for the animals. Yes, it can be chopped into a silage-like substance. Yes, we are seeing a higher protein egg, higher protein milk. There's a Purdue study on hemp cake, and hemp cake is that almost wet sawdust-like consistency that comes after the pressing of that oil. That hemp cake is very, very high in protein. And quite honestly, it's something us humans need to be eating more of because it's a cooler protein. And it also helps us keep our THC and CBD levels that every human naturally has. It helps top those off and keep those done. Okay? I encourage everyone in this room to grab some hemp seeds and put them in your garden and study that plant.
Agreed.
And see how that plant works. Because you're going to have grassy plants and you're going to have bushy plants. And by the way, outdoor plants in Colorado are producing around 8 pounds per plant of flower. And you figure seed and flower is about 25% of your plant weight. And remember that root ball, that stalk, the stems, every leaf, every bit of that plant is medicinal and nutritional. That plant can be ground down to powder if you want it to be, and top dress it on your livestock feed. Heck, top dress it on your oatmeal in the morning. It's the same stuff, and just let it happen. What?
To piggyback a bit, I talked a little bit on ways to cooperate with the federal government and how to get into export markets just slightly. But I very much agree with Wolfe. I think we have an opportunity here if we stay hyperly focused on our localities and our needs and our personal relationships with our neighbors and our next farmers, that this plant does provide an opportunity to acquire some political capital that can get state and federal governments off our butts a little bit.
May I jump in
Please.
there? I don't think it's the place of the federal government to really fully regulate. I think we need to be as self-regulated as possible. Go to the federal government, go to the state and local jurisdictions and say, this is what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. You told me you didn't know the rules or dynamics, I made up my own. And 9 times out of 10, it's kind of like telling dad you did something wrong. You're going to fess up to it. You're going to do a better job of it if you have to report to someone. My concern is if we get too many federal dollars involved, that bureaucracy just waters it down.
Completely agree.
And I think in general, those federal dollars are excellent for the everyday farmer. Mm-hmm. I really do. But at what price in the end? How much decision making, how much, not necessarily, well, it is control of one's own land, but how much of that is taken away when we succumb to those federal dollars? And quite honestly, the average person, the average farmer has the funds, whether it's a loan against the land, a loan against another crop, maybe some, whatever it is. The cost of production of this crop is such that you don't have to take out big, huge loans. You can do a 10 acre grow of CBD You already know those numbers. That's around how many $1 million right there for 10 acres at $500,000 per acre. And you can fund more acreage and fund more acres. That's one of the nice parts about this, especially if you're doing an autoflower, which from seed to harvest is around 65 days. So you can get 2 crops in there on some levels. And in some areas, 3 crops. Maybe that last crop is a chop, maybe it's not that good, but there's a lot of empowerment with this crop, a huge amount of empowerment. And what my goal is, and I know a lot of people here, their goal is to make it easy for you, to make it as easy as possible, because there's so much information out there. There's so many advocates out there, but there's also a lot of carpetbaggers out there as well, which is a huge concern. So we have certifications and we have, provenance on seed and whatnot to take care of that. It's a huge, beautiful ball of wax. It really is. And if you use your discernment, if you use your patience, you'll be able to see how this is going to flow out. We use the current model for corn and soybean, transportation, logistics, drying, commodity sales, and all. We do it on a smaller scale, more specialized scale. You can grow it in mass like you're doing your corn and soybeans. You can do it in a boutique way with specific strains on 5 or 10 acres. There's beautiful money in all of it, and you can choose the way you want to do it.
And on the idea of boutique farms or producers, one of the things I really hope can come out of the rulemaking process is some sort of exemptions for 5 or 10 acres or under. Someone asked about just gardening. Hopefully there will not be barriers put in place where only the big producers can participate in this business.
And that action, that decision falls on you guys.
Yep.
Absolutely. There is no room for complacency in here.
If we don't ask for it, we won't get it.
That's right. And there's no room, though there's a good number of shy people in here like me, truly, you have to overcome that shyness. You have to overcome that reticence. You must. Because if you don't speak up, somebody else is going to speak for you. And Mike, for one, has seen how that works.
Like this to jumpstart an industry, but mostly because we want to return people and health to Southern Illinois, and we want to stop exporting cash for food.
Yep.
And exporting cash for seeds and cash for everything else, and exporting our children right behind it, and to try to return prosperity to Southern Illinois. But I think you're right to say that we have to be vigilant, because there are forces in this economy that are only going to see dollar signs. They're not going to see schools with students in them. They're not going to see farms with children coming back to the farm. They're not going to see rural communities being healthy as a goal. They're only going to see profits at some multinational global level. And if your value system has to do with your farm and your people and the people and land that you love, then that has to be a part of your decision making. And we have to defend that like we would defend anything we care about, and not turn it over to corporate multinational global biz that would just extract the wealth out of the region and not care about what gets put back.
The World Bank, Wall Street Journal, many other conservative organizations have come out and said that a large swath of rural America is a de-developed economy, quite equal to extraction economies in either Africa or South America. So I agree with that. So we do have an opportunity here where if we can meet our internal needs in Southern Illinois, there really should be no exporting of this product until there is a healthy surplus on an annual basis.
And I'm thinking around 10 to 12 years for that surplus to happen. Mike and I were talking about that today. He asked me what my plan was for that supply chain and processing chain. And quite honestly, I see it needing to be local for a good while. Number one, it's local medicine. Local medicine is going to do better for the local people because that medicine, which cannabis does, it adapts to that person growing it or that area that it's in. We need to remember that hemp as a commodity has more energy in it than U.S. currency as a commodity. And if we look at U.S. currency as a commodity, which it is, it's a tradable commodity, that can actually be not necessarily eradicated, but a lot of that can be erased by utilizing hemp as an alternate commodity to cash.
Feminize the seeds, or do you sex them out in the greenhouse?
We use feminized seeds.
Feminized
Yeah.
seeds. And is there hybrids of hemp now that are autos?
Mm-hmm.
So they've already hybridized hemp, not just marijuana, but hemp into auto blooming.
Right.
It's not photosensitive to blooming, so you can get multiple crops.
And while they developed that auto flower, they went ahead and differentiated the strains. For instance, we carry 12 different hemp strains that are primarily for pediatric use, ADHD, ADD, seizures, that type of thing. 12 different ones. While we're producing seed, it's very easy to bring in those characteristics. It's very, very important. Right now, our seed production is done by contract producers in California. I have 6 producers lined up for next year up in Champaign County. We're looking for producers all over the state, and the contracts are really good. They're really good. We as a company are interested in Indiana. However, a majority of our work is pushing into Missouri. We see Missouri as a big factor right now in that process. But I'm happy to come to Indiana. Let me know. I want to go back to labor and say there's plenty of labor, everybody. There's plenty of labor out there. And there are plenty of people that will work, but you have to pay them.
Yep.
You know, everybody says nobody wants to work. You know what? I'm not getting out of the house for
$8 an hour.
I can't. I mean, if it's a favor to someone, that's one thing, but day in, day out through a season, that's nothing. Our minimum on general field work is $25 an hour. In the Colorado market, I mean, it has to be substantial. Now, if you take my CBD, my 125 acres of CBD, with a 10 to 12% cost of goods, you're done in one season. You're done in one season to pay for your land and all.
I just wanted to echo what you just said, because we hear a lot of times, especially some farmers have said stuff like, I could really use some help on my land, and I'm like, good luck with that, because I don't know anybody signing up to get used. There's nobody who signs up to get used anymore. Farmers have been used to death by some of the corporate providers.
And therefore,
people are tired of being used.
Yeah.
And being used, that whole mentality has got to go.
Yep.
And so we have got to figure out how to work together to get prosperity for everybody, and how to make sure that there's a future for the kids, and the old folks get taken care of, and the land is not abused. And if we're not smart enough to come up with that solution, then we all just need to give it up.
well, the industry is inherent with poaching, that being used. It's become a intellectual property poaching, and it's become a norm in agriculture. It's become a norm in business in general, and there are some things we need to do better, and there are some things we need to stop as we create this energy. And it's, how do you want to do business with someone? You know, just like setting your pricing. How do you want to be perceived? How do you want to do business going forward? If you're going to make yourself available 24/7, you're going to work 24/7, right? So it's all how you lay it out. I'll tell you how I approach it. I approach every client that calls me of, you know, where they are, what the compliance issues are. And there have been many times over the years where I've had to say, how much jail time would I get for this? And is that worth it to me on principle?
Yeah.
And I'm talking just the hemp. I'm not
So
talking
for me to
Yep.
answer that question, I say, if you can spare an acre, put an acre in. If you can spare your half of your tomato plot from your annual garden, well then put in that much. Get to know that plant. You guys, yeah.
Really, I mean,
Put in
I can
10
speak to this.
put in 10 plants.
Yeah.
How much trouble
I can speak to this just a little bit. So we've had some pretty full conversations about exactly that. And people who like to push the boundaries are still not willing to go there while the legalities are up in the air. So they're saying it needs to be legal. From there, if we are blocked out of this permitting rules making process and you need 1,000 or 5,000 acres to grow, if you want to put in a test plot, make sure the farmer next to you puts in a test plot, and the farmer next to them, and this town over, make sure they're doing it, and then do it out in the open, and it becomes an access issue. And that is what we're talking about, building that autonomous local power where you present your own solutions to the people who for the people who are currently in power.
If you don't start any trouble, there won't be any trouble.
Yep, that's
Right?
right.
If you don't start any trouble, there won't be any trouble.
Where do you get the seed from?
Like me personally, my group, or where does one get seed?
I'd like to throw out the technical answer, according to Illinois state law.
There we go.
While hemp is still on the controlled substances list, and it is until the governor signs, 4 plants or less is a misdemeanor.
That's correct.
That's just what it's written.
red block.
I say if the seed fairy shows up, that's just good stuff. And it doesn't mean that everything's going to grow, because you don't always know where that seed's coming from. There's different altitudes, different climates, humidity, average humidities, etc. One of the things I noticed about your soil, I'm a soil geek, and I just love soil. And one of the things I noticed here is the alkalinity level. You can see your alkalinity level to be quite high. We're at an ancient seabed at about 8,500 feet in Colorado, with almost pure alkalinity, and it's the most awful fine clay. It's powdery when you step on it dry, but if it gets wet, it is cement. It is cement. The plants love this soil. They love this soil, and they clean up that soil of alkalinity, and they put other nutrients in there. And it's beautiful stuff. And we're in the midst of a 5-year study with the University of Colorado on that.
Doesn't do well in clay soil, but yet the film said it did, and you are just saying it does.
Well, it's different strains, different cultivars, and quite honestly, different clay. Indiana clay is going to be different than Colorado clay, and so on. It just is.
Can't talk about this issue.
No, I just wanted to challenge everybody with a vision, because the book says, for lack of a vision, the people will perish. And I wanted to make sure that if you were thinking about how prosperous you can be and how you can pay off your land and pay off your kids' student debts or whatever else you could do if you had a lot of money, I would like to challenge all of us to consider rebuilding our local food system. Because we have exported so much of our capacity for feeding ourselves, and we're growing corn and soybeans to feed somebody, but it's not feeding Illinois. It's not even feeding Jackson County. And so I would like us to consider putting money back into rebuilding a local food infrastructure so that the jobs and the farmers and the caretakers of the land that go along with all of that return to this area.
I'll put myself on stack after you.
Okay. You were talking about chopping for food grade for livestock and stuff. Is there any processing plants that they're, after they get what they need, their byproduct is the cake powder you're talking about?
Yeah, that is part of the processing, and what I want to encourage is for the farmer to do their own processing, to chop their own plant matter. Well, processing, I don't know if I said this out loud. I know I said it earlier to someone. We're looking at a 25% on processing or extraction the processor and or extractor gets about 25% of the product and or cash value of that. What's obtained from, did you want to jump in?
No, go ahead.
What's obtained from this, it depends on the stage. In the first stage, we're taking all those trichomes off. That's what it's called over there, trichomes. That's the sugar. That's the little crystals of sugar that are on the leaves and buds. That's taken off. Now there's still medication in the plant. There's still medication running throughout the whole plant. But after those trichomes are taken off, that plant matter can still be processed. It can be chopped for human and animal consumption. It can be chopped down into hempcrete components. And remember, hempcrete, as it cures into a marble-like substance, takes in carbon dioxide and emits oxygen during its cure period.
It's carbon negative.
And it cures to a fireproof material.
Pest resistant, mold resistant.
Yeah. You can make this on your farm. You can sell that chop to another processor. You're farmers. You can use baling wire 1,000 different ways, right? I mean, that's the beauty of farming is using your ingenuity and using your entrepreneurial skills. Well, the decorticator is going to help with that. However, there are engineers that can do multiple use machines. I've got an engineer/machinist in Colorado that's taking the whole plant and separating the soft plant matter from the hard plant matter, decorticating what needs to be decorticated, as well as taking the seed and pressing it for oil and cake. It's just a matter of money. Anything can be done. You just have to have the money to do it. And one of the beautiful parts about the cannabis industry is when you're dealing with the revenues that we're dealing with, you can open your mind and really ask God or ask the universe for what you really want, because it can happen because the margins are there and the revenues are there. And if you're going to do it right, or if you're going to do it, you do it right the first time. So you don't have to use as much baling wire later on to do the repairs.
I suggest everyone take a look at a documentary called Bringing It Home. It will give you a lot of information. Bringing It Home. So it's on YouTube. Thank you. There's a line in there about a guy building a whole bunch of houses, and he says he uses barrels, buckets, and blokes. And that gives you the idea of the technology that some uses will take, right? Not a lot. On access to money, once again, if you need decorticator. If you get a mobile unit and you think 3 or 4 farmers can collectively use that, not everyone has to have one, right? You can be innovative here on the idea of what processors are getting. Sunstrand in Kentucky, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but basically what they are offering is a contract up front. I think it's $800 an acre plus seed stock. So no matter what you as a farmer do, if you have a bad crop, you're getting $800 plus seed stock, and that's basically a self-insurance plan. So there's just multiple avenues in which you can do this thing.
What we're looking at in the way of Illinois for tax and regulate and I don't know if it's coincidence or not, but it's about the same timing on federal. It's going to take us a couple years to get the language and everything done in the way of tax and regulate. And during that time, we as farmers are preparing for that to happen, right? We know that once tax and regulate happens in the state of Illinois, it's going to, as in legalized, it's going to take 18 months to 2 years, hopefully 2 years, to get all of the processes and systems in alignment. And this is something that we saw in, and I'm talking about cannabis in general, primarily marijuana when I say this. But if we look at California and Colorado as an example, they jumped the gun and they weren't prepared. California still does not have and I don't want to hear about California, it just happens to be California on this, but California still doesn't really have a regulation software. They really don't have an inventory software. My company does, actually, But yeah, California is operating with nothing right now. He plants hemp in Indiana, and let's say some of it ends up over in Illinois. We're going to be able to look at that plant sample, and we're going to know exactly when that plant, whether it be seed or marijuana or some food product or whatever, we're going to be able to take that sample and trace it back to his farm on that harvest date, and we can even list who was part of that harvest. So that goes into a yeah, at about 8 cents a gram
That's
on your
what-
finished product. That's not bad.
The law in Indiana, as of July 1st, all of our, we can sell, use, and consume CBD products in Indiana.
Mm-hmm.
But as of July 1st, the labeling has to have the tracking ability to go right directly to the source of the farm where it came from.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good thing, actually.
Yeah. We're actually again going with solutions. If they want tax and regulate, we're going to present them with tax and regulate that goes above and beyond what any other industry in this country does. Let's look at alcohol. Let's look at tobacco. You know, we have deadlier food out there in our mac and cheese than we do.
Yep.
You know, so with that we have to lead by example. We have to present them with solutions, things that they either didn't think of or didn't know how to do. And that tracking, that tagging is one of those things. And legislation, proactive legislation, is one of those things.
No, if it's.
Sure. And quite honestly, we don't have enough stock, we don't have enough seed stock, we don't have enough production to really apply a GMO situation to it. However, we all know it's coming. It's in the labs right now. We know that. It's unfortunate, but it's part of our vocabulary now, and that's why I invite you to empower yourself to talk about those things, to address those things with those decision makers. And I encourage all of you to grow your own hemp. I know I've said play with some plants, but eat it, taste it. Get over the green taste of it. Get over that bit of an oily texture. Just get over it.
Go into your garage, import a little bit of hemp, go into your garage and design a product, right? We can start that before we are legally allowed to grow it. So that's something you can do immediately.
Or you can go to your local Walmart. There's dozens of products available that Walmart carries of hemp products.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's all made in China.
I want to touch on imported hemp oil right now. What we're seeing primarily from China is diluted hemp. Much like it's common practice to dilute honey with sugar syrup now on our imported stuff. Canada, China, I think once we produce here and we come to trade agreements with those countries, they are going to produce different types of hemp. You know, like different types of wood. We know that some woods do better in the wilds of Canada than they do in southern Illinois or southern United States or South America, for that matter. There's plenty of room for this product. There's plenty of room on this planet of resources and outlets for your product. It's a matter of deciding, are you going to raise, 2,500 acres of straight industrial hemp? Are you going to raise 200 acres of CBD? What's it going to be? And you guys have I can see the deer in the headlights look on some of your eyes because it's a lot to take in. But you have to trust your instinct as well because there's a lot of information out there. Meditate on it. Pray on it. Think for yourself.
Think for yourself.
Yeah, think for yourself.
Think for
And
yourself.
educate a neighbor.
That's right.
Somebody about hemp.
Yeah.
And every day I'm still learning something new about it. if anybody ever went to any other business and says, this is the opportunity you have to expand a business with minimal costs and maximum potential.
Brand new market.
So this is an opportunity for our farmers. We wanted to make sure our downstate farmers had that opportunity. Everything was written with that in mind.
Yeah.
The manufacturing and production jobs that will be available can only help the economy. And that's drawing people back to the area. Give them jobs when they come home.
That's right. My company is partnering with the University of Illinois, Sonoma State University, University of Colorado, and Ohio State University. And one of the models that we're utilizing is the cooperative extension approach. Getting out in the, I've been doing this for 10 years. I've been in fields. I've smoked so much marijuana, it's ridiculous. I've tracked, that guy back there's like, yeah, man.
It's like we know.
But I mean, I've watched these genetics develop. I've watched these families develop and how the genetics actually mimic their growers. My point on this is, yes, you have to spread the word, and I think taking that curious cooperative everybody knows the cooperative extension county agent, right? They're curious, they give information, but they're constantly asking and constantly experiencing. It takes a while to get into the cannabis circle. It takes face-to-face time. It takes a lot of trust. Remember that inherent paranoia thing. But once you get on a good relationship with a handful of farmers and you're constantly in rotation, whether it be marijuana or hemp, you get on a rotation, you visit these farmers and you see what they're doing, they are an open book with what's going on. And it's a matter of, getting over your ego thing or having enough humility to ask those stupid questions. I love asking stupid questions because the answer and how it's given tells me a lot about that person that's doing it, right? So empower yourself with curiosity.
Are you open to working with Southern Illinois University or just?
Yeah, I'm very open to working with Southern Illinois University. Absolutely, especially not only from a soil standpoint, but from a community enrichment standpoint. There's a lot happening federally. There's a lot happening with the opiate situation. My group looked at, I can't remember what town it's in. It's an old abandoned airport down in this area. Wasn't there there's an old airport down here we looked at. But yeah, Southern Illinois, I'm happy to work with them. Hook it up. Get it done. What we can do nutritionally through the protein of the plant, what we can do spiritually and creatively through the euphoria of the plant, what we can do on a productive basis and also in the spiritual and creative sense by relieving pain with this plant is going to create, has already started to create huge societal shift, huge energetic shifts. We're doing a pilot program in Colorado where we're taking a town of 400 people, and part of our community enrichment / tax revenues is going toward feeding 400 people 3 meals a day for 1 year. If we can take nutritional insecurity and shift that energy of worry, whether you don't know what you're going to make for dinner or whether you don't know if you have enough quarters to buy dinner for your family, that's taken away. It's an example of that energetic societal shift so that people do feel more empowered. Do you know majority of us are starving and we don't know it?
Yes, sir.
We're filled with cardboard, with flavored cardboard and sawdust.
Wood.
That's right. That's right. And I don't know how many people have utilized marijuana in this room, but if you can imagine how you feel and exponentiating that, I'm going to speak to you right there in the red shirt with your smile. If you can imagine exponentiating the way you feel in that, exponentiating that to 5 friends, and those 5 friends have 5, and just keep going with that. It's amazing stuff. It's amazing. And you don't know how much you suffer until that suffering is taken away. You don't understand how much pain you're in until you can lay down at the end of the day and you say, oh my gosh, how did I do that? Or how hungry you are until you're actually fed.
And
spiritually, nutritionally, whatever.
And I think what Wolfe is talking about, there is a lot of structural and systematic barriers to reaching these points of like self-care and activity. So this curiosity and going out and meeting neighbors and collectivizing, and or even just growing a new type of plant that someone might look sideways. There's going to be fear thresholds you're going to have to bust through over and over again. I can tell you, as a guy who's been doing it for a couple of years, good stuff comes on the other side of that. So I really appreciate what you've been saying here today.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
So, you guys are great. Really appreciate everybody that's coming.
Thank you.